So Matt Taibbi is in front of Congress today. He's testifying in the Twitter files sham hearing about right-wing bias in social media companies, which was within 5 minutes dispelled by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's line of questioning a few weeks ago, where she revealed, when speaking to some of the employees at Twitter at the time, that Twitter modified its policy in order to not suspend Donald Trump, changed the rules because he was in violation of it so that he could stay on, and did the same for the hate account Libs of TikTok. So that basically disproved the entire Republican Party's thesis on this front. But don't worry, the hearings will still continue with the help of once venerated reporter Matt Taibbi, who now is a PR person for Elon Musk and Twitter. This is Matt Taibbi's characterization of his press releases on behalf of Twitter that he calls reporting.
Gentlemen, let me start with Mr. Taibbi. You have a long award-winning journalist career. You just highlighted here decades of experience reporting on some of the most complex and important issues of our time. Where do you rate your reporting on the Twitter files among your whole body of work throughout your career? How serious is this?
Well, first of all, Mr. Congressman, thank you for the question. I would say, you know, I spent 10 years covering the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. That was obviously a very serious issue, but this Twitter file story and what we're looking at now and what we're investigating now, I don't think there's any comparison. This is by far the most serious thing that I've ever looked at, and it's certainly the most grave story that I've ever worked on personally.
Well, I think that's an interesting tactic, because that kind of undercuts his own past work, right? Which I guess doesn't really matter to him at this point.
He doesn't give a shit.
Since he's cashing in.
Yeah.
But I mean,
as a pose anyway.
How much wealth was lost for households? Like $8-9-10 trillion?
Almost 10 million people lost their homes.
Unemployment went down to 10%.
1 in 5 people lost their jobs.
Up, I should say.
And I mean, look, this is not, to be honest, like, I'm not surprised Taibbi has this perspective, because if you look at it from his perspective, the financial crisis was good for him. He got this great reputation that Republican Congress people can cite about how great of a journalist he is. Made a lot of bones out of that as the gonzo journalist. And I read all that stuff too. I don't remember much of it. It doesn't stick with me. I mean, he called Goldman Sachs the vampire squid. I guess that was useful. I will say, like, I'm troubled, like, looking back on it, and I would like to get a reassessment of his work on this by someone who's not a capitalist, because he sums it up August 5th, 2013 on Twitter. My whole argument against modern Wall Street has been that it's anti-capitalist, perverted by incestuous ties to the state. Sounds like libertarian. And then he said, April 11th, 2016, I don't know many people who would describe what's gone on with these too big to fail banks since 2008 as capitalism. So, like, it's not a surprise from his perspective, because, like I said, this whole reputation was made as all these people being thrown out of their homes, and you know, him being a child of wealth, he has no sort of ties to that. Also, the type of people that are paying him now, Elon Musk, did really well from the government response to the financial crisis, which was to flood the zone with cash. Elon not only is a member of this Silicon Valley type crew that's been benefiting, and I mean, hollowing out society thanks to low interest rates, but also Elon got a low interest, like $1/3 billion loan from good old Barack Obama. And speaking of incestuous ties to the state, so yeah, it's not a surprise to me that Taibbi doesn't actually have any connection to what happened in the financial crisis, because his life got a lot better.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody about what was found in the Twitter files. The Biden campaign, the big bombshell, asked Twitter to take down links to nude photos stolen from Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah, I mean, that's the original one. There's the subsequent stuff about, like, the CDC and, like, guidance about...
Right.
Which, like, I honestly, like, I think that should be transparent. That's my main problem with it. I don't think it's, like, millions of people being thrown out of their fucking houses. But
let's just list them, though. That thing, the CDC stuff, He also said that the Trump administration, when they were in the White House, was in contact with Twitter mods, getting stuff taken down, which he did not reveal. You're muted, Binder. Yeah, I can't hear you. There you go.
My bad. There we go. Yeah, he didn't go. He mentioned in the first one, like, oh yeah, there's in the information I got, there's requests from both sides, Democrats and Republicans, and then he proceeds to, and in all the subsequent other Twitter files, whether it was Matt Taibbi's subsequent Twitter files or the other journalists that they've gotten to do this, they never ever go into what those Republican takedown requests are. And we should also put an asterisk on the whole entire thing, because the entirety of the Twitter files is basically requests, as in, hey, we came across this, we think, and this is for Democrats and Republicans, we think this goes against Twitter's policies, but you need to be the judge of that. We're just sending this over to you to to report it. And we want you to take a look at this. And so, yes, being that it's from Congress people, they would expedite the check of this material, and then they would decide whether it went against their policies or not. From what I've seen so far, the Twitter files has actually shown that the old Twitter regime, if you want to call it, was actually more competent than a lot of people thought, in terms of how they really struggled over how to deal with some of these edge cases on their policies. There were internal debates between various executives in the company from all sorts of different departments, showing just how serious they took this issue.
And when it did fall, a question of a right-winger like Trump came up who was in violation of those policies, it's been shown that they made exceptions to keep him on the platform, the exact opposite of the conceit that the Republicans have in this instance.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the one by one. It's like the nude photos and that first one. That's the big reveal, right? Like that was the biggest one, period. And you go with the big story, right? You take the time to investigate this stuff, and you open up with the big story. I mean, this is my honest take of this. Matt Taibbi is dying for his Edward Snowden, like Glenn Greenwald has. And no matter what Glenn Greenwald has become, and no matter what he does, he'll always have the Ed Snowden story, the NSA story. You can't take that away from him, no matter whether you like him or not. This is just the facts. Taibbi never got that type of story. Like Matt just mentioned, he did great work. He got awards, but there's no defining story of Matt Taibbi's career. Right. And he is begging. He's trying to make this it, because he sees the opportunity there. And there certainly is a financial opportunity there. He's got the Musk sycophants and the right wingers eating up this shit, and certainly growing his Substack and his Twitter following. The guy's probably raking in the cash now, but it's still not that defining. No matter how hard he tries, it will not be that defining Ed Snowden story that is to what Glenn Greenwald is. But Taibbi does not have it.
And he would, but he has to act like this is it, and not only because of like his own desire, but also like he's telling Elon Musk, his boss, in this respect, that it is. And I also think it's revealing if you listen to Taibbi closely. He says, after the but, that was pretty bad, but what we are investigating now, he puts it in it's a continued process, as if there's like more to come out. And we know, like just what Binder said, like you would have started with the most interesting thing if you did, and it was that Hunter Biden shit. Well,
interesting to his audience. I mean, the more interesting thing to me is how the person in government at that time, the Trump administration, like the Biden campaign was a campaign at that point. The Trump administration was in office. That's actually government
campaign
overreach.
Lobbies platform. Wow.
And also lobbies to get revenge porn of his troubled son taken down. Like, let's be real, that a lot of, they could have pursued legal action on this front. Honestly, I don't think it was in Biden's best political interest to do so, but this constitutes revenge porn in a variety of states. Okay. So Twitter accommodating him and taking that down is not a scandal whatsoever. What is a scandal, potentially, I don't even know. What I would like to know, if Taibbi was a real reporter in this way, was the government's request to Twitter, the person in power, the Trump administration. That has still not been revealed, selectively so.
Well, Angus King did want Matt Christman suspended for saying that he has a name that sounds like a steakhouse.
It's amazing. All right, Brandon, go ahead.
No, I mean, I stopped paying attention to the Twitter files a while ago because they were always dropped like on Friday night or Saturday night, like, which really shows the opinion of the average Twitter file enthusiast to drop them on such a busy night for most people. But, I think they rely on people just not wanting to be honest with themselves. And I know the company doesn't want to be honest about what social media companies do. You can strip away all of the politics from it. You can strip away a lot of the stuff from it. It's like, yeah, social media platforms give preferential treatment to their influencers. Kim Kardashian can do whatever she wants, except maybe decapitate somebody on Instagram. And they're not going to delete her account because advertisers, that brings value to the platform. And it seems like a lot of what the Twitter files is. And also, I think this is, supported by Elon Musk just simply running this business into the ground with his changes. It's people who don't really understand what social media companies are. It's people who maybe have grown up on social media companies, people who run their businesses, their semi-legitimate businesses on these companies, and don't want to come to terms with the fact that these companies can shut off your access to them with a light switch, and you can't really do anything about it. And they might do that if you don't bring value to their company. And they're not a free speech platform. If you try to make them a free speech platform like Elon Musk said he wanted to do, you find yourself, coming up to terms with the fact that many different countries don't have these types of laws, and you operate internationally. So free speech in one place is hate crime in another country. And there's no hierarchy of those laws. If you're a business, you just have to take them all into consideration. And
also companies in those free speech companies, companies in those free speech countries will take their money elsewhere because they don't want to see their brand name, their ads next to, I don't know, say Nick Fuentes' latest white supremacist screed when he's promoting Kanye 2024.
I understand what people get at when they want to pretend that Twitter is a free speech platform, even when it's not about money, when it's about psychological stuff, but ultimately it's, as a leftist, I don't find it very helpful to pretend private companies can be held to the same values that public companies can without really severe curtailments on by the government on what they do, which no one in this situation is advocating for. They just want to pretend that Elon Musk is able to provide a free speech place. But again, just from the most basic level of how social media platforms work, if there's an algorithm that chooses what to display to people, I would argue that's curation, and therefore it can't be a free speech platform because you're promoting things. You're actively choosing what to promote based on certain metrics that you've unilaterally decided. And so, I get it. I think this conversation is hard to have because it's been entirely hijacked by content creators who think free speech, again, means freedom to promote my own stuff without any interference from the platform that I have no equity or say in. But that's not a legal standard that anyone can possibly support. It's, if Elon Musk wants to pretend like his site is for that, then we see what that does. It's advertiser-based revenue, subscription-based revenue model that won't work for this kind of site, and it's just going to go into the ground. And there are, again, free speech sites, there are forums, you can talk about whatever you want, but you have a harder time promoting your brand to thousands of people on them for the reason that you can promote whatever you want.
And that exact construction is why, in fact, Twitter had a disincentive to ban Trump, and why they changed their policies during the time period to allow him to continue to be on, because for a long period of time, he was synonymous with that social media platform. That was how he got his message out there. And he was the president of the damn United States. That was actually quite good for them.
There's an article about Facebook, and so much of this is the internal politics is genuinely interesting. And when Trump said during the George Floyd protests, he tweeted out, or wrote on Facebook, rather, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And there's a lot of people that wanted to get that removed because it was seen as a a provocation towards violence, and I think absolutely it was,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're a police officer, right? Like, do you trust America's police departments to not see that and be like, okay, we're gonna take it easy tonight? Like, and then what would happen if they would have done something? Who's in the fucking White House? It's pardons, right? Like that stuff. That sort of thing is all a game to like people like Greenwald and Taibbi. It's like I don't know if Taibbi's comment on it. I know he removed the Garner book from his bio on Twitter, but Greenwald's been feeding into this thing about how like the establishment liked the protests and they fed into him, and like I just think it's really dangerous.
Well, let's pull up that other clip really quickly because that feeds into what we're talking about here. But as Bradley's doing that, go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was just going to say, they don't think the solution is that you take that down. They think that the solution is that you only monetize it to the brands that want to advertise on that content. So you say, oh, yeah, some advertisers might have an issue with that, shooting and looting. But, we show it to like a gun brand or some kind of like arms manufacturer, and they might want to promote that, but they don't. Again, that works for a podcast where you're reading one ad or two ads before the show. It doesn't work for a platform like Facebook or Twitter that has to take into larger concerns about ad revenue, not just like, can we get one ad on one particular post? And it's, you feel like silly having to say it, but this is so much more about like people's ability to build their brands on this site than it is about their ability to say what they quote unquote want, that it's just become one-to-one.
Yeah, and this is why this is branding here, because this clip pairs with it, right? Here he is on Bad Faith speaking about the national security state and them targeting the right more than the left. When that's what this reminded me of it when Matt said when the looting starts.
It's hard not to say sharp.
I know. I don't want to. but like. During that time period, right, we're now getting all of this reporting. We had Trevor Aronson on this program last week, whose podcast Alphabet Boys everyone should check out, how we are getting more and more information about how the FBI, other law enforcement agencies, the deep state, as they call it, were provoking violence, attempting through informants and things like that, trying to stoke violence in Black Lives Matter protests. And this is a through line of things like the FBI historically, of the deep state, of the national security state, targeting the left. And if you want to have some sort of focus on that in a hearing, which is what now Taibbi is a part of, if it's not centrally focused on how these established national security or organizations like the FBI are targeting the left, you are doing so as a political project because it's both ahistorical and doesn't fit into actually what's happening in the country right now. But just so you know, and if it's especially clear for you now, who Taibbi is speaking to at this point and who he's working for, this is his characterization of who law enforcement and the deep state types target.
Taibbi's eye roll.
When I see conservative sites talking about this, yeah, sometimes it's like the FBI is doing this and that and the other, but oftentimes there's this far-ranging anti-right-wing bias, which I don't have a problem with, except for I think that the story is there is an establishment bias against more fringe populist parts that include, yes, the right, but also the left. It's a nuanced point, but I think that it's important.
But the reason you're seeing more of this against the right than the left is that the left is toothless and no threat to anybody, whereas the right is actually scary to the national security establishment because of Brexit, because of Trump, and because of other things.
If that's true, Matt, why is it that 85% of all FBI action, FBI activity, has been historically focused on the left?
Good question.
I'm not talking about the right now contemporary. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm not looking at 1970. I'm looking at 2015 on.
Well,
This is
there you
an
go.
aside, but he looks so much, Matt Taibbi look like Nicholas Holt to me. the actor from a lot of stuff. Like he's going to be in Renfield with Nicolas Cage soon. But like, yeah, just like the
You
face
mean
is
him
very
in
Nicolas
Mad
Hoult.
Max or him in real life? Because I don't know. I mean, that's a very nice compliment there, Brandon. But
I don't know. I mean, if you're into Nicolas Hoult, I know I don't necessarily understand that. I think he's
I
the
get the
poor
Holt
man's.
comp sometimes too, actually.
oh well, there you go. But anyway,
I'm the good Holt.
It's so funny how the two through lines that the right is right now currently trying to push, they directly contradict each other. You have this Taibbi thing where the authorities are after the right because they're so dangerous. And then you got Tucker Carlson for the past week showing the police at the Capitol building walking the QAnon shaman and the other Capitol rioters into the Capitol building. And they're trying to portray that as, oh, look, we told you that they were just peaceful. Of course, not showing where they are attacking other people and attacking some of the police who were not helpful to them. But at the same time, like we've been saying that, we know that there are supporters of these various far-right ideologies, these supporters of Trump, these supporters of those very people who showed up at the Capitol building, who work for the Capitol Police, for police departments all across the country, work for various different agencies. I'm sure there are, without it, I mean, the Secret Service, we know for a fact, buddy with Trump and co. The idea that these two things can be happening concurrently just don't add up. It's just bullshit that like the right doesn't have friends in very high places.
We also know that, like you said, the deep state is not primarily targeting right-wingers, not in the past and not currently. But if they were, we know it's because statistically, right-wing terrorism is the largest form of terrorism in the United States. Far-right Christian terrorism, anti-abortion terrorism, these things are just like measured fact. The multiple of our agencies, although we know that they've been taken over by various untoward influences, have pointed out for decades that the biggest threat to American national security domestically is the existence of right-wing terrorist movements. But it's just like Matt said, these terrorist movements for a long stay, I know we're not to look into the past, but we know that as part of their training of other members of fringe right groups, they encouraged them to join the police. They encouraged them to join Secret Service. They encouraged them to join the Army in order to get training and access to resources that they find beneficial for their militia. It's the left who doesn't encourage, obviously it discourages people from influencing or like infiltrating, quote unquote, these organizations, because we know that these organizations are way more likely to turn you radically far right than they are to turn you into, rather than you are to turn them in any meaningful way to the left. And so they've been trying to craft this narrative that the deep state is targeting primarily right wingers ever since a handful of them got arrested at a riot they threw for Donald Trump at the Capitol. And it just doesn't map onto any measurable data, but it does map onto the constant victim complex of the right wing. And so they're very willing to believe now that they have a few of theirs in jail for a political crime, that like this is the biggest injustice that has ever occurred, and it's the primary target of the FBI, the CIA, whatever. And it's just not the case. It's completely inaccurate.
Well, they targeted small business owners who came to overturn the election. They might have an above ground pool and live in people in suburbs that the right kind of associates with, and as opposed to
above ground pools.
Well, like these Antifa. I'm just like, the point is just normal people that they associate with their base, as opposed to Antifa, scary Black Lives Matter activists, where we know factually that they were targeted by the FBI with an informant in at least one instance, and more information's coming out about the rest. And we will know as time goes on. But it's all based on a lie.